All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cain Stevens Super Show. I am your super host once again, Cain Stevens, and I have another awesome guest. This guy is across the world. Uh, I think he's like 8 hours ahead of me or something, and he's a fellow podcaster. He is a he does art exhibits. He's also a poet. He's just a very educated guy in art history and everything. And I just when him and I talked a little bit about coming on the show, I thought this guy is perfect for our show and to talk about, maybe he'll even think about getting weird with us. But with that being said, let's welcome, is it Guy Dazin? How do you pronounce your last name?
Guy Dazin, but it doesn't matter. You're fine. Don't worry.
No, I'm synonymous with butchering people's name, even easy names. So I might as well
Yeah,
butcher.
me too. I struggled a bit in the past, pronouncing names.
Yeah. So, well, welcome to the show, my friend. You know,
Thank you.
I it's interesting to me. I love the internet because we can talk from across the world now. Like we don't have to dial up.
Same.
We can look at each other. And you're in am I wrong? Are you somewhere in Israel right now?
Yes, I am, in fact.
Awesome. What I like to ask people is the boring old person thing, which would be how's the weather out there today?
Oh, the weather. Yeah, that's an interesting question because just today the weather shifted dramatically for no apparent reason. It was raining for perhaps 16 days straight.
Wow.
Downpour, no stopping, no sunshine, which is very foreign to my part of the world, the Middle East. Um, you know, I like to expound a bit on points. So the Middle East is also called the Levant. If people, more educated people, would probably know. But so the weather is fine, to put it. Um,
I think you had mentioned
uh,
before in prior messages that it gets so hot out there that you could literally boil an egg outside on the rocks, huh?
yes, you can try, and I think you can succeed
Yeah.
within a period of a couple of hours, perhaps 2 to 3 hours on
You
average, I would say.
guys don't really experience winter like we do, correct? Like, I mean, you
Yeah,
experience more rain and things like that. Is that pretty typical for
yeah.
you?
We don't prep. We don't prep very well
Yeah.
in terms of facilities and infrastructure. Sewage and stuff like this. It doesn't get drained. Uh, it always gets flooded everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we experience that entire cities sometimes, or sections or parts of cities that are just underwater
Mhm.
for no explainable or apparent reason. It's just because there is no infrastructure for a good drainage or sewage system that will pick up all the rainfall.
That's fascinating to me because I mean, here in America with our cities, we might complain about it, but we have pretty good infrastructure overall. I mean, they have a
Yeah.
really good drainage systems. We have all that stuff. And that's not me saying, me being a jerk American, like, oh, haha, we have it better there, but that's not it at all.
No.
I'm just simply saying
Yeah.
our structure is pretty good over here overall. So those of us that complain, we really should stop complaining and just kind of like enjoy the fact that we have all these amenities.
Yeah, but I think the human factor goes into it. It's not about the budget or the GDP or lack of funding for such projects. It's just the money, the finance is not allocated to those areas of life as it should be. It's more focused on security, you know, um, surveillance, intelligence. It's not dedicated to let's just say minor things such as sewage and drainage.
Well, I promised you I wasn't going to get too political. I don't really like to get political anyway, but I promise
It's fine. It's fine
I,
by me.
I want to at least ask because people are going to want to know the truth. How are things over there? And are you afraid right now with how things are going? Are you afraid of a current war going on?
I think that everybody should be afraid right now. It's a very foreign time. It's a very delicate and uncertain period of history, I think. People don't know how to approach subjects and big ideals and doctrines as in the past.
Mhm.
All the great philosophies and religions have lost their kind of control and their stake in the game. They're not a major competitor. Right now, the major competitors are tech companies and foreign nations, tyrannical
Yeah.
oligarchies that are sort of dictating the narrative. And it's very dangerous, I think, for everybody, not just our area. Because I think this could be a kind of, a small flame that ignites a large fire, a large conflagration that I think will envelop much of the world
Mhm.
if things won't get better from this point on,
Yeah.
won't be resolved by different means.
Well, it's certainly getting hairy throughout the world, and by hairy I mean scary. It there's no place is safe right now, really. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
we just got to remember one thing: we're all at the end of the day, we're all human beings. If we could spread a little bit more, I don't mean to be all you know peace and kumbaya, but I do in a way because it's like I
yeah, me neither. Yeah,
we just gotta be human beings, right? We just gotta look at each other like you guys, everybody over there is no different than us, and everybody in Russia is no different than us. They might have a different
yeah.
philosophy on things, but I wish we could just get back to loving each other a little bit. I honestly.
And the picture behind me is the lost um, archive of books, the largest in human history, it is said or reported. The Library of Alexandria that was engulfed in flames. And I think it is a good metaphor for what is going on right now in the world, where all the major doctrines and religions and political movements are just burning away, simmering away. Um, Nobody seems to care or to know enough to try to pick up the mantle and actually kind of do something that is meaningful and influential and impacting to change the situation
Mhm.
because we're kind of in a zero sum game, which is very dangerous because of the existence of nuclear weapons. Um, and I think that I don't want to sound like a soothsayer or a fear monger, but I think that something like that um, could probably be a virtual reality in the next couple of decades if severe steps and measurements are not taken in this period.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point you bring up. I think that that's certainly a scenario that can take place. Um, you're talking about the loss of this, like cities being burned to the ground throughout history, losing archives.
Yeah,
Well, let's get into your podcast a little bit. So your podcast is called Thoth the Scribe, right? And
exactly.
you were kind of explaining to me before, but explain for the listener out there. what exactly the podcast is about, and kind of like why you started doing it.
Yeah, why I started doing it, I couldn't tell you myself. It was just, it was a kind of a filler or something that I wanted to do with my life for some time before I actually got into it. I actually started listening to podcasts, and podcasting was not something that existed in the Israeli cultural scene. Um, just just a couple of years ago, podcasting started to take off when one famous basketball player, Israeli basketball players, one of the only ones to be inducted into the NBA and drafted. He came back to Israel and did a podcast. So he established a podcast, and of course, it was mega popular because he's very famous. So I saw a lot of people, very educated people, even our president, our sorry, not president, the prime minister did a podcast. It was such a weird craze and the fad that I thought maybe I can do this myself because I see people with, a quarter of my IQ trying to speak on topics that they know nothing about. And I think to myself, yeah, I can do it better. So I just got on with it. So my first episode was with a mildly famous singer songwriter. He does very beautiful original tracks and also does different covers. We talked about, poetry and the meaning of art and the meaning of music and the transcendental powers that music possess over the listener and its consumer. And then it gone on from there. I had religious figures and, cultural figures, humanists, and different intellectuals and academics, screenwriters, producers. I had even someone who worked. I think you know this. If you know the Metal Gear Solid series of games. Yeah. So I had one of the producers, one of the artists, one of the main artists from the series. She came on and talked, and she talked in Japanese, and I don't know Japanese, and then I translated it. Later, I transcribed it for the audience. So I had fun kind of encounters like that. Um, Funnily enough, the hardest guest I had to get for my podcast were Israeli because the Israeli kind of intellectuals and um, and researchers and humanists and different kind of cultural icons, they are very hard to get up. To it's very hard to get in contact with.
Right.
Um, so, but and of course there are people who are more famous who are foreign. Um, but um, but yeah, I got a couple of people who I was excited to have on my podcast, and I think it picked up from there. But strangely, my most popular podcast was not with a particularly super popular and well-known person figure, but the topic was very, I think, very with the times. It was germane, as we say, to the times. It was during there was a great big crisis when it came to Ethiopian Jews in Israel in conjunction with the police and policing, which is a big thing I know in America. Policing and rights and incarcerations and all that stuff. I also had on my podcast someone who was indicted for a murder and spent time 30 years in jail after he was acquitted. And then I spoke with him. He was acquitted maybe 10 years ago or even more, maybe 15. Um, strange stories like that. The platform I have, which is a relatively small pond, um, the backwaters of the Middle East, literally. It's the most barren place for 2,000 years. It was the most barren place on Earth in some capacity. So yeah, the most popular episode actually was with a great researcher, humanist rabbi who was an Ethiopian Jew, and we spoke about the problem of in Judaism we have Ashkenazi Jews and we have Sephardic Jews.
Mhm.
Sephardic come from the east, from Spain, um, but it's not just exclusive to Spain. It's also all the Middle East, and we have the Ashkenazi Jews who come from Germany, Hungary, Poland, all those countries. So we talked about the conflict between the Ashkenazi rabbinical kind of authority against the Ethiopian Jews when they made Aliyah. Aliyah means they migrated.
Okay.
The Ethiopian Jews only migrated to Israel like in 1986, and then afterwards in 1992, and two different big migrations that were funded by the government, and they brought them here. Some, listen to this, they walked. They walked for months from Ethiopia to Israel. Ain't that a thing? You don't have camels. You don't have herds. You don't have sheep or horses. You don't have anything. You come with your family. That's it. So it's crazy to make that travel, like a medieval crusader.
Mean, there's not a lot of you're right. I mean, they're walking through a pretty barren place to get.
Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine the journey
it's
that they.
insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about Ethiopia is, like Ethiopia, you're talking about, they have Jews who went there.
Yeah.
I don't know if then they kind of changed it because I know there's Ethiopian Bibles and stuff that are different for like,
Yes, they're
and they
they're Ethiopian. They're not Christian or Jewish. They're Ethiopian, and I can tell you exactly the name of that tome, that text, the scripture. It's called the Kebra in Ethiopian language, and it's a different kind of epic. It's like the Iliad. Okay, it's like the Iliad. It's like Don Quixote. It's like the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. It's a national epic, national epic. Yeah,
so
like the Bible. The Bible is.
you're looking at different canon of the Bible, so to speak, and in different texts. Like, are they? Is that where they
Yeah, yeah,
up the Book of Enoch and all that stuff? Type thing.
yeah. The Book of Enoch is said to be only surviving in the Gez. Gez is the Ethiopian kind of dialect of Jewish people. They called themselves the Beta Israel, because they were the let's just say the Israel 2.0,
Yeah.
because the different tribes of Israel disappeared allegedly, and only one tribe actually existed, the tribe of Israel.
Yeah.
All the different tribes, there were 12 tribes, okay, in the land of Israel. They called themselves the Israelites. They were not Israelis. They were not Jews. They were not Canaanites. They were Israelites. There were different beliefs among the Jews, and it's a big story. But essentially, what they actually profess to believe is that the um, the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant, was not lost, and it's somewhere in Ethiopia. And from the Ark of the Covenant, and between, there's a story in the Bible of the marriage of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Queen of Sheba, nobody knows this. She was Ethiopian. She was African, at least. and and they profess to believe that the Ark of the Covenant was not lost and it's in Ethiopia, and that they have the actual original manuscript for the Bible.
Wow.
So it's very it's very complex, to try to dissect it, because there is, of course, about the Qumran scrolls
Right.
and the Dead Sea scrolls. Christians will know by that name. They don't know the name Qumran. It's an Ottoman kind of turn of phrase. It's not even Christian or Israeli. The British were in control of the land of Israel. They called it Palestine. The Romans, nobody knows this, but the Romans called Israeli Palestine for the first time in history. Um, Nobody knew that name. The British called it Palestine, and so did the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, or the Turkish Empire. It's not obvious that everybody knows this, but I'm just trying to point that out so everybody knows.
You talked about you started a podcast because you saw a lot of like lower intellects, and you thought you could, I might be the lower.
Yeah, I'm not trying to boast or say I have the largest or
No.
uh, the greatest, the peak, of intellect, but I'm just saying, like, relative to some of the people who do podcasting, and I'm not encroaching on anybody who does podcasts. I don't care. You can do a podcast about whatever subject you want. I don't care about your color, your skin, your gender, your nationality. I do not care. I care about the content. I
Yes.
care about the content. What are you actually bringing to the table? Something that is new, refreshing, and interesting, kind of informative, something that is actually pertinent to current events, something that has a message, a meaning, a kind of a gravity to it. Yeah.
Well, I think that this conversation with you is exactly a fine example of that. I think it's important for especially us here in America, right? So I mean we have so many podcasts and we have so many things to consume here. I mean, kids are making them in their basement, kids are, people are doing them on their phones, and that's okay. Like it's
Yeah, cats and dogs are doing it. Like cockroaches are doing their own podcasts.
but I think it's important for people like us to talk. I mean, I'm kind of I'm not your typical American. I mean, I could look like an idiot, but I know at the end of the day, what my mind is, and I look at it like this. I like to share the conversation, the joy of the human experience, and this is the human experience in its full form. We just, they didn't have the internet, but so many years ago, and now we get to talk to each other, and now we get to show
Yeah.
people and turn this over. And this,
Not that long ago, not that long ago. Just think about it. We didn't have the internet in 1987. It was it was a private, it existed, but it was a private forum, for the elite or whatever, not the elite, only programmers and things that know how were actually able to access it, actually able to upload data onto it, onto the servers. I think servers were like, it was um, it was a kind of for the rich.
yeah,
People were not able to purchase a full server for a long period of time and actually access it and upload different information and to converse with people from around the world and actually, exchange different goods, like eBay. That was a different name for it
yeah,
at that time. Before Google actually came onto the scene, people were extremely, infinitely more ignorant than they are today.
right.
Like, you can't even, it's night and day. It's night and day. Just just 30 years ago. It's it's insane to think about, actually.
Insane to think about. And the original computers were so big that you needed massive rooms. You'd have to open your doorways to just roll these things in and install them.
Yeah.
Now we got, we have these little laptops, we have our phones that are our computers. We can just carry those around. It's a cool time to be alive. But then I wonder sometimes, like, what do you think it's doing to society though, to have all
Mm,
this? Yes, it is an educational tool, but there's so many dumb things too out there, and there's so much misinformation now where people just
mm.
irresponsibly spout off, especially here in America. They spout off and they create rumors, they cancel people over hearsay. I mean, do you guys have that type of stuff in Israel too? Like, do you guys have the cancel culture? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it has crept up, slowly but surely in the last couple of years, in the past couple of years, but not to the extent, that it goes on in America. When you see some kind of a office administrator in some remote backwater university, like blabbing or spatting out something that she shouldn't have on social media, and then immediately gets fired, gets shunned, gets wiped off the face of the earth. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe in such an approach. It's very rigid. It's very hardy. It's very, I think, uninformed. You know, everything has a context in this world. Um, you're just doing a poor piss job in trying to indict someone who, they're trying to indict their character as a person and not to actually punish or penalize the offense. If they were to penalize the offense in a smaller um, sense and not to indict or to wipe that person off the map completely, I would agree with that. But I don't agree with canceling people outright, just clicking alt right delete,
Yeah.
literally. clicking alt right delete. I don't believe in that. That is very dangerous to society, and it sets us back thousands of years. Every instance of someone being shunned or being, you know, just um, just expelled or um, or fired for saying words is very dangerous.
Hey there, grooming gurus. We've got something wild for you today.
That's right, folks. Get ready to tame the untamed with products that redefine the beard game. Introducing the Elegant Sasquatch Grooming Company.
Elegant Sasquatch, that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Well, grooming should be an adventure, my friend, and with these products, you'll embark on a journey to the grooming wilderness.
So, what makes the Elegant Sasquatch so unique?
It's all about taking your beard from beastly to beautifully wild. Picture this: you wake up and your beard looks like it just got back from a spa day. That's the magic of their high end beard balms.
Spa day for the beard? Sign me up. And let's not forget their beard butters and oils. It's like giving your beard a tropical vacation. I'm talking about a beach party for your facial hair.
A beach party for the beard. This company's got the best marketing ever.
Oh, but we're not done yet, folks. The Elegant Sasquatch Grooming Company also has beard washes that make shower time a majestic experience.
Showering with Sasquatch? That sounds like a reality show.
It does, but seriously, listeners, if you want to sophisticate your outer beast, head over to elegantsasquatchco.etsy.com and use the code SUPERSHOW at checkout for an exclusive discount of 20% off.
You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram. Check them out, like them, and while you're at it, tell them the Super Show sent you.
It's the equivalent to a modern day witch hunt, is what it is. It's basic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a way for everybody now to say, "Oh, I don't like what this person's saying, so I'm going to get angry," and then they rally the troops, right? And they all get together, and pretty soon it's like doing a public lynching. You know what I mean? In my head, I know that that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
close comparison, but it's really not, because electronically
Yeah.
and for that standard, it's the same thing. If they didn't have all this, they'd be doing it in that way, wouldn't they? Oh, we don't understand this person. We don't understand these people. And then we start going backwards like we did with like in American culture. It's not really that long ago that we were going through the civil rights movement and the way they treated, black people and everything.
Yeah.
They're kind of different water fountains, they're lynching people, they're doing all these terrible stuff. It's not even that far ago
It
that
was a lot worse. It was a lot worse. And I'm not American. I don't know about that particular piece of history. It is a very important and vital and central part of American history that I'm not, well informed.
they talk to you about
But
all? I mean, on that side, is that really brought up that much? Like, here's what America did.
yeah, a bit, but not a lot. Not a lot. In the history textbooks,
Yeah.
uh, it's mentioned, in a very general sense. You have Martin Luther King, and you have Nelson Mandela, which is he's not even from America. He's from South Africa. So the textbooks are not great. Okay, they're there to instruct, to inform, but they're not there to actually teach profoundly, to actually review American history from that perspective. Um, I know that from the get-go on the Mayflower on 1620, when the Pilgrims were bringing all the diseases on the Mayflower, they already had enslaved people on board on their way to be enslaved in a country that will become the symbol for freedom for all the nations for the next 400 years. I want you to think about that, because literally in 1776, the world became different. The world changed. You have the first. It didn't start in United States, but it was a cross pollination between Britain and America, and a lot of other nations, of course. But in Britain, the first independence and the kind of the breakage of the chains of the monarchy that has been a long-standing institution for thousands of years in that country, in the Isle of Britain. The first parliamentary government was established after the English Civil War. That kind of mindset was a precedent. That precedent came in the figure of the Pilgrims. And the Pilgrims, they did not came just from England. They came from Holland and Germany and France and many other countries, to actually establish civilization and colonization, I would call it. Not in a bad way, it's colonization. Every nation throughout history did this. This is the last act of survival, the last act for survival. And they were not one nation, they were 13 different colonies throughout the US, America. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence. After that, you have the Declaration of Independence in France, the 1789, that completely and utterly changed history. After that, every other nation throughout the 19th century gave itself its freedom, its own language, its unique traditions, its unique history, its unique myths, religions. Yeah, so it's very unfortunate, to get back to the original point of talking. It's very unfortunate that we see this sort of the buildup of, non-conformity, independence, self-reliance, freedom that America used to represent. Because once America, falls, it's the last bastion, I think, of Western culture that actually exists in this world.
Yeah.
And I say Western culture in the best of senses, not in the, the dark and unscrupulous and toxic. I don't like to use that term, but I'll use it here. The toxic influence of the different ideals of slavery and monarchy, and yeah.
Well, what do you think? I was gonna get weird with you a little bit, ask you about ghosts and stuff, but I
Yeah,
really,
why not? You can do that.
we maybe we'll get into that here. Maybe we'll
I
do.
won't I won't I won't shy away
Uh,
from
but I do want to ask
being
this:
untouchable.
with all the fallen empires throughout history, if you look at
Yeah.
how history always repeats itself, do you feel personally? And I mean, I want this from an worldly opinion. Do you think America is an empire that could be on the downfall? Because I feel sometimes that we are doing a lot of the same things that most fallen empires have done towards the end of their tenure. What do you think?
Mm. I think America is a special case. No empire is exactly the same. The Persians were not exactly the same as the Sumerians. and the Acadians, and the Romans were not the same as the Greek Athens with democracy and the police. Police, I mean by city state. I don't mean police as in the modern term. Um, uh, even here in Israel, there was a kingdom um, that lasted for about 80 years. Nobody knows, no Christian will know this story, or a lot of Christians will not know this story about the Maccabees. Everybody knows Judas Maccabeus. Everybody knows Judah Maccabee, but they don't know the story. Essentially, the story tells of a small group of Jewish fighters or rebels. It tells the story of the insurrection of the Jewish rebels and them freeing themselves from the tyranny of of the of the Greeks. Okay, so Alexander the Great came to Israel in about 300 BC, and it was one of the only states or countries he wasn't able to conquer. Empires are not the same, and America is a special study case. America was one of the first uh, first independent countries that had an independent um, money system. They had an independent army. They had an independent culture, distinct from Britain and France. They're kind of forefathers. They released themselves from the burden of monarchy and taxation. They're the first country to actually fight for its independence and actually win. You see that because the American Empire lasted or lasts for 400 years or so. So you're asking the question, will America fall? I would like to answer no, but I think we both know the answer that at some point America will fall in some capacity or will break away. America will start, cracking down on itself. It will eat itself to some capacity because they will not be able to overcome the differences, political, identity politics, the race politics, the history, the political and philosophical differences are a big chasm to actually leap. So to answer your question, yes, America will fall, but it will be a domino effect. When America falls, all the great other nations will fall because the balance of power will be, will cease to exist. The balance of power is there to, like the UN or the United Nations or DARPA or NATO or all those great forces that are actually tasked with governing the world. If they would not exist, the domino effect will wrap up, will speed up.
Right.
And I think that will be a very sad day when the process actually comes to term, when America will actually fall. So first off, America will break. That the tectonic, plates of America will start shifting. Everything will break. Perhaps even literally. I don't know the physical, the physics, or I'm not a meteorologist or geologist. I don't know. But America will break, economically, socially, racially, politically. It will break off. After that, the allocation of resources will be spread, scattershot to all different walks of life, and everybody will be taking care of their own kin. And it's very sad just talking about it. I can't even imagine something so severe and catastrophic taking place as the fall of the last, I think, bastion of Western culture.
It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic movies that we watch. It's almost like it's
Exactly. And it's not a far shot. It's not a far cry from reality. What is being depicted. Forget about the cinematography and effects and explosions. I'm talking about the essential. The essential thing is that America is truly has established itself for the last 400 years as the true vanguard of humanity to some capacity. And the economic crises, the social identity crises, the religious, and the conflicts that will emerge from such a catastrophe, such a awe-inspiring catastrophe. I think the world will never be able to recover.
what's a terrifying thought. I often think about just simple things like our reliance on technology now. Like what would happen if the grid goes down? You know what I mean? If all of our
Yeah,
electronics, everything stops and we go back to foraging for food,
that's it.
yeah, it's over, right? I mean, we will consume each other.
It's over within a second. It's over. All the major hospitals will be shut down. They will be, they will have a yellow tape, condemned. Everything will be condemned. Um, Planes. We have 15,000 planes in the sky, in the not in the sky at any given time. Think about that. When 15,000 planes just crashed to the earth. Okay. Now
That,
the good news is the earth is still electromagnetic. So maybe in some capacity you can channel some of the energy from that particular source, into a new kind of emerging technology that will be able to replace that grid.
well, that leads me to my next question would be, you're in the Middle East. I know you've told me that you are into like the Egyptian culture and all that. Do you think that
In some capacity, in some respects.
let me ask you this. Do you believe, especially with the pyramids the way they're built?
In my opinion, there is no technology that is extraterrestrial that was implemented in the building of the pyramids. I believe it was, a good, honest day's work by people who were not slaves. These people were experts, they were professional builders. They had the knowledge. They were a part of an association, people who studied, geology and geometry and math and the movement of the stars, jotting down the night sky for thousands of years. These people really know their stuff, let me tell you. There are people who are trying today, for example, to build or rebuild the pyramids in Egypt, specifically in Giza. The Giza Plateau has the most marvelous, some of the wonders of mankind can be found there. You know, we're talking about, 1,000-pound stones that were laid on top of another, and they are so tightly knit together that you can't pass a credit card through the different breaches of the stones. And I don't know how to tell you, but in my simplistic, honest opinion, what I learned, let's not forget that I learned this stuff in university in art history, general review course that also covers the ancient period. We haven't talked about specifically about all of the tools and methods of actually transporting the stones from the mines. They are not that far away. They had light boats. They are called in Hebrew. They're called dovrot, and dovrot is a sort of is a kind of a wasp, you know. So they call these kinds of ships wasps, and it's not a derogatory term, um, but they had the means of transporting by land and by sea um, all the wood, all the different tools. They could mine the blocks of stones. They had. That's what they are. They are guessing one of the major theories by the experts and researchers and academics is saying that they had tools dipped in arsenic, which would immensely, um, speed up the process, of actually cutting up the different blocks in different sizes, measurements. They were professionals. They knew of Euclidean math before Euclid had ever been born. Uh, in some way, I couldn't tell you how or when they actually were privy to that knowledge. But what I can tell you that it seems pretty obvious that we have other examples, like in Machu Picchu and Chichen Itza in Mexico. We have, and people don't know this, they have pyramids in Mexico and China. I wanted to say China. So they have in China, they have in Georgia. I don't mean the state of Georgia. I mean Georgia as in the uh, um, uh, East European country, Georgia. So we have a lot of and that's the final nail on the coffin. of people who actually. I'm not trying to, get into that argument. If
I love this side because so many people want to side with, and I'll let you finish, but so many people want to side with the idea. They want to buy into the fact that aliens did everything and all of this. You're providing a wonderful argument on the other side.
I'm not. I'm somewhat informed. I didn't delve, too deeply to that subject, but I think I know enough to say, and what I wanted to say, there's another example. There were awesome, like megalithic buildings that were built way before the period of the pyramids. The period of the pyramids, just to put on, just to give a little perspective, uh, we're talking about a period of 2500 BC or thereabouts, the construction of the pyramids. We won't get into dating and carbon dating and stuff like this because it's very complex and we don't have a lot of time, and I don't have a lot of knowledge in geology and stuff like this. But we have another example, a very important one, that comes from ancient Mesopotamia, from Assyria. I mean Assyria, not modern Syria. From Akkad, there were these massive constructions that were called ziggurat. And the ziggurat were essentially huge honking pyramids. They were a big complex. They were open. They were not sealed off like the pyramids. They were open. They were even bigger than the pyramids. They were essentially a sky rise. They didn't have rooms and stuff like this. They had only one altar for the high priest to actually give offerings to the gods. And I think we have a lot of examples of people being able to build, awesome constructs and very impressive buildings and methods of building and construction way before the period of the pyramids. So the pyramids are still an enigma in some sense. There are a lot of plot holes, in the narrative of, in regards to the construction of the buildings, the pyramids. And I think there's merit in trying to research more and to delve more and to try to find more documents, more scripture, more text, more tools, more kind of testimonies that give us a small glimpse into how they actually built the pyramids. But they say that it only took them 20 years, which is very impressive. It's very impressive. I know that modern buildings are built between 2 years and 5 years, depending on the size, depending on the material, depending on budget, depending on workforce, and all that. Yeah, so still very impressive. 20 years for 3 massive pyramids. That is not a small feat.
No. Well, I do so appreciate once again your point of view on that, which is why I asked you the question. I felt like you answered it eloquently and very very well thought out and very good. And I do appreciate You probably thought, oh no, he's asking the alien question and he only believes in aliens. That's not true. When
No, I would.
I ask questions like these, I ask them because regardless of what I believe, it's irrelevant. I actually want to know the answer because I'm searching for the answer, as everyone else should. Which
Yeah, everybody else should.
a great point. We should read books. We should go back and study things instead of just believing what we heard on this podcast or what. Well, I hate to do this because we're getting close to the end of the show here. I'd like you to provide you an opportunity now if you'd like to promote anything or just tell where people can find you. Anything that you'd like to do, please. Here's your format to do it now.
Yeah, I don't think I would like to promote anything. Just try to listen to this podcast, and if you learn something from it, um, it's wonderful. If you haven't learned anything, that's even better. If you haven't learned anything, it means that you have a lot to learn. Just a second about the supernatural. You wanted to talk about it, so
Oh yeah,
perhaps we can dedicate a few minutes to supernatural.
I would love that. What do you got for me? I mean, have you witnessed the supernatural? Have you witnessed ghosts or the paranormal in your lifetime?
Mm, not not in not in a very vivid way, but I I have had kind of a pseudo religious slash supernatural instances. For example, there are moments, it happens to everyone, when you think you put something in one place, and when you try to pick it up a second later, and it's gone, and then it's in a completely different place, and you see it's it's moving through the air,
Yeah.
kind of, and you don't know how it got there. So there are moments like that, but that's vanilla. That's vanilla supernatural. It's not something that we want to hear about. So I had pseudo religious experiences that are more profound. For example, whenever I have a kind of invocation or the muse strikes me and I have to write something. There was one instance when I walked through the house and I kind of came up to the balcony door and it was open and the sunlight kind of flooded the entire room, and I walked towards it. And as I'm walking towards it, I see that the balcony is no longer there. It disappeared. And I see only the the skyline, you know. I'm on the seventh floor, so I can see the skyline. And there's no balcony. I don't know how or why. And it's kind of a come to Jewish Jesus moment. Um, and I don't know how it happened. It's very, very daunting, I think, and at the same time, it's very kind of calming, and it's a moment of solemn, but in a good way. Um,
Do you think you were seeing
it's
that
so
for a specific reason? Do you think that something was presenting that to you in order to calm you, make you feel that euphoria?
I don't know if it was. It's not like a uh, Evangelion kind of a moment. The chosen one. No, it wasn't like that, but it was very close to something that will be similar to a divine calling, not in a particularly religious sense, but just in a general human experience sense. Um, I also had encounters after my grandfather passed away. Throughout our house, sometimes I would think I see shadows in the night.
Mhm.
I think, when you have that tremor on the back of your head and your kind of small hairs kind of stick up. I had moments like that where I felt my grandfather was kind of judging me. He wasn't hunting me, but it was kind of judging me from the beyond. Um, and I had what felt like real encounters with a specter or the Grim Reaper.
Okay. Do you have time to elaborate
What?
a bit? Um,
Elaborate. Well, when I was young and I was a bit of a sickly child, I had asthma. And one of the times that I was kind of fevering, um, I thought I saw at the door, I saw an image, you know, of a hooded figure in a black robe standing at the door, and the opening of the door. Um, I had my head, turned to the opposite side, but I thought I can ignore that figure.
yeah.
But once you toss and turn in your sleep, and one time that I tossed to the opposite direction, I saw a vivid face, a clear, skeletonized human visage,
Yeah.
shall we say, in a more intellectual way. So it was very daunting. Um, I'm actually working on a fictional book that doesn't deal with that subject, not with the subject of dreams or supernatural, but something that meshes together, religion, philosophy, history, something that is kind of an epic in a small scale.
Yeah. Well, I look forward
We
to
can talk about it
yeah.
in a different.
Well, let's have you back on sometime. We can talk about more of this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
With clever editing and everything, you only have if this is usually about an hour show or a little more. So, you can always have a part two, right? So we can always do some of this
Yeah,
stuff.
why not?
Yeah, so please come back on. You're one of the favorite guests that I've had so far.
Thank you.
I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy the things you're saying. Even the supernatural. I mean, you piqued my interest for sure on all of it, though. I mean, I thought we had a pretty good discussion as two human beings today, and that's why I do it. So
Yeah,
I just thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm just so
thank you so much.
here for the listener. But yeah, let's schedule a part two and let's try this again sometime. All right.
Awesome. Why not?